What's up guys, and welcome to another deck tech video. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but we are back with a spicy standard deck that I think will be well positioned in the upcoming Guilds of Ravnica environment, Sultai Midrange. Before we jump in, I would like to point out that this is a preliminary list brought to us by Brad Nelson. You can see the deck in action over on the Star City Games channel, and I definitely encourage you to do so. Because this is a preliminary list, there are some cards that may or may not be in the final competitive version of this deck, but we will talk about those as they come up. Without further ado, let's jump into the deck. Let's start with the creatures, which, as Brad states, are really the key to this deck. Most of these creatures have an enter the battlefield trigger, giving them instant value regardless of whether they are removed afterwards or not. Brad's list runs 18 creatures, 2 Elvish Rejuvenator, 2 Hostage Taker, 4 Jadelight Ranger, 4 Merfolk Branchwalker, 3 Ravenous Chupacabra, 2 Underrealm Lich, and 1 Muldrotha the Gravetide. As we can see from this creature package, Elvish Rejuvenator, Jadelight Ranger, and Merfolk Branchwalker all give us EOT effects that let us churn through our deck and even ramp us in the case of the Rejuvenator. Both the Ranger and the Branchwalker are also serviceable beaters in the early game, and all 3 creatures can trade off to keep us from losing to the upcoming aggro decks we expect to see in the new standard environment. Hostage Taker and Ravenous Chupacabra are also perfect for this deck, with the ability to remove opposing creatures that we may be struggling against. Hostage Taker also allows us to replay the creature we remove, which is obviously powerful as it gives us a bit more flexibility in grindy matchups. Both of these cards also help us get out of a stalled board position quite well, and since we are a mid-range deck, we can expect to run into that from time to time. Underrealm Lich is a card that we've discussed on the podcast and one that I am extremely excited to see. This is obviously an engine card for this deck and a powerful one at that, allowing you to churn through your deck at an extremely fast pace while fueling your graveyard with powerful spells is exactly what you want for this deck. With its second ability, it's also quite difficult to actually remove once it sticks. Obviously 4 life can add up quickly though, so do manage your life total with caution when playing this deck. Finally, we have the powerhouse finisher of the deck, Muldrotha the Gravetide. Not only does this card service the deck by providing some much needed power and toughness to the board, but it also utilizes graveyard synergies to allow us a second use out of our cards. This adds up so much more value to all of these EOT abilities on creatures and gives our removal even more longevity to close out the game if need be. While this is only a one of, we will dig through our deck pretty quickly to find this card, and it's definitely the big finisher we want to get to. Moving to the Planeswalker slot, we see 2 Vraska Relic Seeker. While this is an expensive card, the payoff is perfect for a deck like ours. Being able to spit out a couple of pirates provides protection and represents extra damage to the opponent. The second ability also gives us reusable removal, which is absolutely fantastic and fairly flexible. While we don't expect to ever ultimate, she also provides a very real threat for an instant win if left unchecked. The spells package for this deck is fairly predictable, but for good reason. We see 2 of the Eldest Reborn, 3 Assassin's Trophy, 2 Cast Down, 3 Vraska's Contempt, and 4 Thought Erasure. Obviously removal is a high priority and we have a lot of it here. The Eldest Reborn is perfect for us as it gets around hexproof and deals with planeswalkers effectively. It also has an added bonus of allowing us to buy back something awesome from either graveyard. Cast Down and Vraska's Contempt are pretty easy inclusions, Cast Down being efficient against a large number of creatures seeing play right now, and great for early game removal, Vraska's Contempt being a great catch-all for the mid to late game, and having the added bonus of exiling can get around indestructible or graveyard recursion. The newest includes are Assassin's Trophy and Thought Erasure. The Trophy is a card everyone is talking about, and for good reason. It's cheap, it hits any permanent, and it can be played at instant speed. Flexibility allows this deck to outvalue the opponent, and for that reason, the Trophy is perfect. It is worth noting that you give your opponent a land, and that is very relevant. A lot of the games will be grindy, and giving them an extra land can provide them with a slight advantage depending on what they have in their hand. Thought Erasure also seems like a great fit for this deck. While 2-mana hand destruction is usually not my favorite, this does hit any non-land permanent, and it also triggers Surveil, helping you dig through your deck even more. Being able to pull an opponent's hand apart while enabling your own deck is just icing on the cake for this deck. For this deck, we are running a fairly high land count of 26, including 3 forests, 1 island, 2 swamps, 1 drowned catacomb, 2 evolving wilds, 1 field of ruin, 4 hinterland harbor, 4 overgrown tomb, 4 watery grave, and 4 woodland cemetery. With Shocklands back in standard, we are able to run a large number of dual lands for this list. A few important things to note: Evolving Wilds and Field of Ruin both synergize well with Muldrotha. While not necessarily the main game plan, you can pretty easily attack your opponent's land base with Field of Ruin, or pull out a few basics with Evolving Wilds when need be. With only 6 basics in the deck, this is obviously not the big focus, but it is worth mentioning before moving on to the sideboard. Again, I want to mention that this is a very preliminary list, so we are going to see some cards that may not be perfect for this in sideboard. Even still, I believe there are a number of cards here that do make a lot of sense. 2 Carnage Tyrant, 1 Deadeye Tracker, 2 Deathgorge Scavenger, 1 The Eldest Reborn, 1 Assassin's Trophy, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 1 Fungal Infection, 1 Argyl's Bloodfast, 1 Vivian Reed, 1 Duress, and 2 Golden Demise. This is a very widespread sideboard in that it has outs on multiple different deck archetypes. I won't go over any specifics on this as we don't know exactly how the meta will pan out once Guilds of Ravnica hits, and it could be that a number of these cards are simply not relevant. I do want to tack on a card or two that I expected to see in this list but didn't. The first is Search for Canta. This isn't a big surprise as it is a powerful card, even seeing play in Modern right now, but why was it not included? Brad cites his reasonings as being twofold, the first being that a lot of the important cards in this deck are creatures, which a flip search does not do much for. Additionally, he states that due to the abundance of Field of Ruin, a flip search is not long for the battlefield anyway. While I do see his reasoning on this, I would argue that an unflipped search is valuable enough to warrant an inclusion. Digging more and more is fantastic for this deck, and fueling your graveyard is really not a drawback in a deck with Muldrotha. Additionally, this plus a Lich gives you so much filtering every turn that it would be tough not to find whatever you need for a given turn. At that point, a flip search is probably still worth it and definitely still powerful, but you will have gained value whether it is destroyed or not. The other card I would have liked to see is Doom Whisperer. This deck is a bit lacking in the finishers category, and having an evasive flyer that can beat face and fill your graveyard just seems perfect. Obviously, this is a mid-range deck, so that curve shouldn't be too high, and we already have a number of good late-game cards, but I think it's at least a decent consideration in a deck like this. Overall, I'm really excited to see where this deck lands in the upcoming meta. Sultai seems to be a strong contender, utilizing a lot of the best tools in Standard to hopefully pull out some great wins. If you have a deck list you'd like to discuss, or a Sultai deck of your own that you think might be better, make sure to share it in the comment section below. As always, please make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of our awesome content, but with that, I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you in the next Deck Tech video.